Good evening, everyone. I want to begin with a question that sits underneath almost every conversation that parents, teachers, and school leaders are having right now. What will our children actually need to thrive in the world that they're growing into? Not the world we entered, that's for sure, and not the world school was originally designed for, but the world that is unfolding right now as we speak. A world shaped by rapid change, by artificial intelligence, yes, by constant access to information, by new demands in work, communication, and problem solving. And if that all sounds like a little overwhelming, well, I think that's because it is. But I also think it can be clarifying because it reminds us that the job of education is not simply to help children get through this week's homework. It's to help them become capable, thoughtful, resilient learners for the future awaiting them. And that's why tonight's conversation matters. We are here to look at one important question. How can public school districts use tools like Khan Academy and Khanmigo in ways that genuinely help children, support educators, and strengthen families, especially for students around the ages of 10 to 12, because that's what we're talking about tonight. Notice I didn't say, are these tools magical? They are not. I didn't say, should technology replace teachers? Absolutely not. And I definitely did not come here tonight to give you a sales pitch. I have no stake in this game, guys. That is, except for caring about today's generation and future generations. I came to invite a careful, informed conversation about what happens when academic challenge, emotional development, teacher workload, and new technology all meet in the same place. Because ages 10 to 12 are not a minor stage in learning. They are a hinge point. These are the years when schools start asking more from children. 5th and 6th graders move deeper into fractions, decimals, ratios, negative numbers, geometry, statistics, more independent reading, more structured writing. They're expected not only to remember, but to reason, not only to practice, but to explain. And during these same years, many children begin forming lasting beliefs about who they are and about who they are as learners. Now, as a certified CBT coach, I see that as enormously important because when a child hits a hard problem, what happens next is rarely just about academics. A hard task creates a thought. That thought creates a feeling, and the feeling drives a behavior. For instance, I don't understand becomes I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this becomes frustration, embarrassment, or even shutdown. And then that feeling becomes avoidance. And when avoidance becomes a habit, well, the child doesn't just lose practice, they lose confidence. So tonight is really about much more than software. It's about whether schools can build systems that help children to stay in the struggle long enough to grow. So why ages 10 to 12? Well, this is why I'm here. This is what you all asked for, and for good reason. If you wanted to choose an age range where academic development and self-belief collide, it would be hard to find a more important one than 10 to 12. At this age, children are old enough to notice when they're confused, old enough to compare themselves to classmates, old enough to decide, sometimes very quickly, math is just not my thing, or I'm just not a strong writer, or other kids just get this faster than I do. And yet, they're still young enough that the right support can dramatically change their story. Just one good year can interrupt a whole spiral. One good support system can keep a moment of frustration from turning into their whole identity. And that matters because the future that these students are entering will not reward memorization. It will reward adaptability, reasoning, communication, persistence, and the ability to work with powerful tools without becoming dependent on them. So when we talk about Khan Academy and Khanmigo, I want to frame them within that bigger question. Can they help children become more capable learners, not just faster answer getters? That is the real question. And for the record, faster answer getter is not the same thing as future-ready human. We've all met those adults who answer really quickly and then think about it later. Yeah, that's not what we want for our kids. So why are districts even considering tools like these? Well, there is a practical reason. Districts are exploring guided digital learning and AI-supported tools right now. Teachers are carrying enormous demands. Students are arriving with wider ranges of readiness. Families need support at home. School systems are under pressure to personalize learning, close gaps, and prepare children for a changing future. And all of this is happening while educators have finite time, finite staffing, and finite energy. That context really matters, because when a district adopts a tool, the question is not just whether the tool is interesting. The question is whether it can fit into real school life. Like, can it align with curriculum? Can it with the existing systems? Can teachers learn it without overload? That's a big one. And can leaders monitor the progress? Can families understand what it is and what it is not? Those are sensible questions, and they all must be addressed. One reason some districts are taking Khan Academy seriously is that its district program is designed around implementation, not just access. The district offering includes automated rostering, onboarding support, tailored professional learning, ongoing implementation help, and leader-facing data tools for schools and districts. And for clever districts, it also supports LMS syncing with Canvas, Google Classroom, and Schoology. This all allows the work to fit more naturally into systems that educators already know and use. Now, that may sound technical, but for school systems, it's not a minor thing. It means the conversation is not simply, here's a website. It's more like, can this become part of a coherent instructional workflow? And that matters because schools do not need more disconnected tools. They need systems that reduce friction. Because if teachers have to click through 17 tabs just to assign fractions, well, that's not innovation. That's like cardio. So why does this matter so much for teachers? Well, it should be obvious, honestly. Let me just say this very plainly. For teachers, time is everything. Not because teachers don't care, but because they do care so very much. And there is never enough time to do everything well. And I'm not exaggerating when I say many teachers have to choose between using the restroom or making copies for their class. That's not a choice, guys. So when educators hear about AI, many of them are not thinking, oh, how exciting. They're thinking, is this going to create more work for me? Or will it meaningfully reduce some of the work I already do? And that is the right question. At the moment, Khanmigo for Teachers is free for all U.S. teachers through Microsoft support. And the teacher tools are aimed at very practical needs: lesson planning, differentiation, rubric creation, exit tickets, and summaries of student work. That does not mean every teacher will want it, and it does not mean every output should be trusted without review. But it does mean the tool is targeting one of the most urgent problems in education: teacher bandwidth. And that theme keeps showing up in implementation reporting. Educators involved in pilots have described the strongest value in planning support, brainstorming, lesson framing, and content review, while also emphasizing that success depends on structured and professional learning. This is a very important nuance. The value is not the machine will teach for us. The value is the machine may be able to remove some repetitive prep work so teachers can spend more time doing what only humans can do, like seeing that child who's discouraged, noticing the student who is pretending not to care, adapting to the moment, repairing confidence, building trust. Technology should not replace those human acts. Actually, it can't. If anything, the best argument for thoughtful AI use in schools is that it might create more room and time for those human acts. And any tool that gives a teacher back even 20 minutes is not small. 20 minutes in a school day is practically a mythical, creature that nobody's ever seen. So what does this look like in real life? Well, One of the most important parts of this conversation is moving beyond official platform language and listening to what people in the field are reporting. Pilot programs and district reflections have been especially helpful here because they tend to show both promise and limitations. In Michigan, educators involved in Khanmigo pilot described the tool as useful for idea generation, planning support, and classroom activity design. But they were also clear that AI only works well when schools provide structure, clarity, and support. Lots of support. That is a far more credible message right there. There's also a broader implementation perspective from Wisconsin, where district leadership has framed AI integration not as a gadget story, but as part of a larger effort to rethink how schools prepare students for a changing workforce and create more space for deeper, more human-centered learning. And while classroom anecdotes should never be confused with large-scale proof, they can still help us picture daily practice. Teachers in district examples have described using writing support to help students complete essays and using Khan Academy practice to reinforce standards and address learning gaps alongside classroom instruction. What I find most useful across these voices is not the hype, it's the consistency of one theme. These tools appear most useful when they are treated as supports for guided thinking, targeted practice, and teacher efficiency, not as replacements for professional judgment. Now, let's bring this back to the child. A 10-year-old stuck on fractions, an 11-year-old anxious about word problems, a 12-year-old who would rather go silent but admit confusion in front of the peers. This is where design matters. One reason education leaders distinguish purpose-built tools like Khanmigo from general chatbots is that the goal is supposed to be guidance rather than answer dumping. That distinction matters for upper elementary and early middle school learners, especially because the educational goal is not just completing a task. The goal is building thinking habits. That balanced, school-centered design is essential because no AI tool should be treated as flawless. These systems can still be wrong. They can still be uneven. They still require adult oversight. A lower-risk, education-oriented design may matter a great deal for this age group. Why? Why this age group? Because children between 10 and 12 often need three things at once. They need access to grade-level work, they need support repairing unfinished skills, and they need dignity. And that last one matters more than many adults realize. A child will work very hard to avoid looking incapable. So if a district can give students a way to quietly review prerequisite skills, ask one more question, get one more explanation, and then re-enter the grade-level work with a little more confidence, that is not a small thing. That is not just academic support. That is emotional protection. And from a CBT perspective, it can interrupt a damaging internal script. Not, I can't do this, but I can do this in steps. Not, I'm behind, but I need support with this part. And not everyone else gets it but me. But learning gets easier when I ask better questions. That shift right there, guys, in self-talk really matters. This is not just positive self-talk. This is the correct way to reframe things. It matters enormously. Because sometimes the difference between I quit and I'll try hard again is one good prompt and no audience. That's what a good AI system can give kids, a way to ask questions where they are not embarrassed. Now let's talk evidence. This is where caution and hope need to live in the same sentence. A recent peer-reviewed study in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences analyzed multi-year data from more than 200,000 students across hundreds of U.S. school districts and found positive effects on math learning. That was all associated with Khan Academy use after strong controls were applied. And that is meaningful. But we should be honest about what it does and does not prove. It does not prove that every district will get the same results. It does not prove that any technology works well without implementation. And it certainly does not prove that AI by itself is the answer to educational challenge. What it does suggest is that structured, standards-aligned learning tools can contribute to improved outcomes at scale when they are actually used in real classrooms. That is a serious finding, and it gives districts a better basis for conversation than testimonials alone. At the same time, broader caution is warranted. Independent reviews and child safety advocates have warned that AI tools in education still need strong guardrails, transparency, and adult oversight. That's not deniable, right? We all agree with that. So the best takeaway is not blind optimism. It's informed realism. Some promising evidence, some encouraging field experience, some legitimate caution. That is usually what thoughtful innovation looks like. Messy, promising, and in need of adult supervision. A description that also fits middle school, don't you think? So now I want to speak directly to the moms and family members in the room, because sometimes education conversations become so technical that they lose the human center. Parents are often not asking, "What is your implementation framework?" I don't think I've ever heard a parent ask that. They're asking, "Will this help my child feel less defeated? Will this make homework less miserable? Will this support my child without replacing real teaching? Will it be safe? Will adults still be involved?" Those are fair questions, and no responsible school leader should dismiss them. Some of the strongest independent commentary on Khanmigo has focused on exactly those concerns: that it was built for education, that it is lower risk than many general AI tools that children might otherwise encounter, and that ongoing concerns such as inaccuracies, bias, and the need for adult oversight still remain. That matters because the real alternative for many children is not AI versus no AI. Often the real alternative is a purpose-built educational tool with guardrails versus unguided exposure to general purpose AI somewhere else. Because you know they're already there, right? And those are not the same thing. Parents also care because they can feel the emotional temperature of learning at home. They know when homework becomes a nightly power struggle. They know when their child stops taking risks. They know when the sentence, "I hate math," is really code for, "I feel ashamed when I don't understand." So any district conversation about tools like these has to include family communication. Not just logins, not just permission slips, but real communication. What the tool is, what it is not, what adults can see, how students are expected to use it, how it supports learning rather than shortcuts it. When families understand the purpose, then the trust gets stronger. What does a thoughtful district approach really look like? Well, if a school district is considering deeper work with Khan Academy and Khanmigo, what would a responsible approach look like? I think it starts with 4 principles. First, begin with purpose, not novelty. The district goal should not be, "We're using AI because everyone else is." The goal should be something more grounded. We want to reduce student frustration. We want to support teachers with planning and differentiation. We want to help students get more timely guidance. We want to strengthen readiness for the future while keeping learning human. That is a much healthier starting point. Second, start where the developmental need is greatest. That, my friends, is grades 5 and 6. That makes a great deal of sense. These students are crossing into more complex academics. They're beginning to form stronger beliefs about their own ability, and they are old enough to engage meaningfully with guided support, while still young enough that habits and confidence can be reshaped. Third, train adults first. Let me say that again. Train the adults first. No tool is wiser than the adults implementing it. Teachers and administrators need shared expectations. They need good training, not quick training. They need examples, boundaries, and boundaries before students ever log in. Fourth, keep the human being at the center. If a tool increases dependence, it is not helping enough. If it undermines teacher judgment, it's not helping enough. If it confuses families, it's definitely not helping enough. And if it makes students passive, it is not help enough. The goal is not more automation for its own sake. The goal is more meaningful learning, a balanced way to describe the benefits. So, if I were to summarize the strongest case in a single balanced statement, I would say this. Public school districts may benefit from working with Khan Academy and Khanmigo because the combination can bring together standards-aligned practice, implementation support, teacher assistance tools, and guided student help in a way that fits more naturally into existing school systems than many disconnected ed tech tools do right now. Again, the district program includes automated rostering, onboarding support, professional learning, implementation support, and data tools for school and district leaders. And in clever districts, it can also sync with Canvas, Google Classroom, and Schoology. For teachers, that matters because time is everything. And the teacher-facing Khanmigo tools currently free for U.S. teachers through Microsoft support are aimed at practical tasks like lesson planning, differentiation, rubrics, exit tickets, and summaries of student work. That is the practical case. But I don't think the deepest case is technical. I think the deepest case is human. If these tools are used wisely, they may help a child ask just one more question, try just one more time or one more step, stay with one more difficult task, recover from one more moment of discouragement. And sometimes that is exactly where learning turns around. So let me close here. Our children are not simply preparing for the next grade. They're preparing for a world that will ask them to think, adapt, communicate, discern, and keep learning long after school ends. They will need academic skills, yes, of course, but they will also need confidence, resilience, curiosity, judgment, and the ability to work with technology without surrendering their own thinking. That is why this conversation matters. Khan Academy and Khanmigo may not be the whole answer. No tool really is. But the research, the implementation stories, and the educator experience suggest that they may be one useful part of a larger strategy to help schools support children more effectively, to help teachers use time more wisely, and help families experience learning with less fear and more possibility. And for those children ages 10 to 12, that possibility matters a great deal, because these are the years when a child often decides, school is where I fail, or school is where I learn how to keep going. I know which future I want for them. Thank you all for spending this time with me tonight. It has truly been a pleasure to share this conversation with you. And remember to keep thinking. Smarter systems create stronger bonds. For those of you who would like to explore further, a good next step is to review the Khan Academy District's information, the Khanmigo teacher resources, independent reviews from Common Sense Media, and implementation reflections such as Michigan Virtual's pilot story. All of those taken together, those sources offer a fuller picture than any one voice alone. Thank you, and if you would like to reach out to me, my information's on the screen. Just email me, give me a call, DM me. I'm always up for a good conversation.